Hey everyone, welcome to Devotionables, brief devotions for busy people. My name is Isaac Buckner, and today's passage is going to be Numbers chapters 3 and 4. In the book of Numbers, we see God's people still at Mount Sinai, preparing to enter the Promised Land. And here at Numbers 3 and 4, we see a census taken of the tribe of Levi. In the first two chapters of Numbers, we notice that the rest of Israel has been counted, but the tribe of Levi remains missing. And we see here that God sets apart the Levites to guard and protect the tabernacle. The Levites were set apart by God to ensure His presence with His people. And this reality shows us the importance of God's presence with His people. The Levites were specifically chosen by God, and they were chosen to take the place of all the firstborns. In Exodus, we see that God chooses the firstborn, every firstborn son from Israel, to be wholly devoted to Him. And here in these passages, we see that God chooses the Levites to take their place. When counting all the numbers, though, we learn that there are more firstborns than there are Levites. And so there's a group of firstborn sons of Israel who don't have a Levite to take their place. They are in need of redemption. And we see God provide a way for these firstborns to be redeemed through a tax. And I think this structure here shows us the importance of God's presence, but also shows us that God makes a way to redeem His people. We also see in Numbers chapters 3 and 4 the demands of God's holiness. Several times in just these two chapters, we see that God's presence is described as dangerous. No outsiders are allowed to come to the tabernacle, lest they face God's wrath. We also read about Nadab and Abihu, two sons of Aaron who came to God with unauthorized fire. And because of their unauthorized fire, they were killed. Holiness, God's holiness, demands total obedience. The detail and the precision that we see in these two chapters show us that we must worship God on His own terms. We can't worship God on our own terms. But praise God, even though we are unholy, God gives His grace and allows people to approach Him. Numbers 3 and 4 also tells us how the Levites arranged themselves around the tabernacle. And the Levites being arranged around the tabernacle, in a sense, protected the people from God's holiness. It's by God's grace that the priests were located where they were. Moses and Aaron and the priests were located at the east side of the tabernacle, which is the opening side. And outside of where Moses and Aaron were stationed were the people of Israel. And these passages tell us that this was for the people's protection. And so in a sense, it's only through the priests that the people of Israel could approach God. They could not come to the tabernacle, to God's dwelling place themselves. And this reality reminds us that we, as Christians, have access to God. Hebrews chapter 4 tells us that we have a great high priest who sits at the right hand of God and gives us access to God. And because we have this great high priest, because we have Jesus Christ, because we have trusted in Him, we have access to God. And when we need help in times of need, God responds to us with grace and mercy. And so in Numbers chapter 3 and 4, a passage just seems like a lot of details and a lot of numbers. We see that God makes a way for an unholy people to dwell with to dwell with a holy God. And this is cause for worship.